Hello, everyone. First of all, we're just going to wait 1 or 2 more minutes for everyone be able to join our section. So let's just take a wait. So as I can see, a lot of people already log in. So again, hello everyone. My name is Charles Chenchi, and thank you for joining this webinar on life cycle assessment. Today, we will explore how LCA can support more sustainable and competitive decision-making in industry. This section is designed as a short introduction, so the goal is not to go deeply into technical details, but also to understand why LCA is becoming such an important tool for companies today. Before we begin, let me briefly show you the structure of today's sections. First, I will briefly introduce CVIB Lab and our research areas. Then we will look at the broader environmental context and why sustainability is becoming a strategic priority. After that, we will introduce the principles of life cycle assessment itself. Then we will discuss why LCA is valuable for companies, some common misconceptions about the methodology, and finally, how organizations can start applying LCA in practice. Let me start with a short introduction of Civil Lab. We are a collaborative laboratory focused on the cement industry in Portugal. Our main associates include industrial partners such as Simpor, Cecil, and the Portuguese Cement Association, together with academic and research institutions like EST and LENEC. And we have the main objective of reducing environmental impacts and supporting decarbonation strategies. For that, we work in three research areas: CO2 capture, utilization, and storage, energy transition and efficiency, and innovation in sustainable cementitious materials. And this last one will be the focus of today's webinar. So let's get started. But before we talk about LCA and EPDs itself, we need to understand the context. Today, we face multiple environmental challenges that require urgent action from governments, industries, and society. Basically, we need to act now. We see pollution affecting air, water, soil, which directly impacts ecosystems and human health. At the same time, we are facing broader systematic challenges such as climate change, biodiversity loss, and increasing pressure on natural resources. But we kind of know that. But how bad is our situation? Well, one useful framework for understanding these challenges is the concept of planetary boundaries. It identifies key Earth system processes that maintain the stability of our planet, such as climate change, biosphere integrity, and freshwater use, for example. And we have already exceeded 7 of these 9 planetary boundaries, and that can be a huge problem. And in response to these global challenges, governments and industry and institutions have established several international commitments and policy frameworks. As example, we have the Paris Agreement. It started in 2015, which aims to limit the global warming to less than 2 degrees Celsius. And for that, we have, for example, the European Green Deal, which defines the EU strategy to achieve climate neutrality by 2050. Another important development is the new Sustainable Product Directive, which is highly relevant not for only for Europe, but to the globe. Its objective is to support the transitions toward a climate neutral, circular, and competitive economy. And for industries, This means that sustainability is no longer optional. It's becoming a core requirement. Okay, now that we got that, so we can go to the LCA itself. But before, it's a quiz time. So now we are going to do a quick interactive quiz with 3 questions. For which one you will be able to vote for the answer you think is correct. And please don't overthink it. It's going to show up for you a pop-up up in a poll that you can vote. Just go with your institution and let's see what happens. So let's jump to the question number 1. Who do you think pollutes more, an electric vehicle or a petrol vehicle? Take a moment to think about it, and please vote on the poll that you're seeing. I will give you everyone a minute to think and submit your vote. Let's see. Now it's half-half. A, pet a petrol vehicle is winning from now. 78% of people. Yeah. So I think it was enough time to everyone to vote. I will not give the answer right now. Let's jump forward to the question number 2. That it is, which has the lower, attention to the question, lower environmental footprint, a disposable paper cup or a reusable plastic cup? Option A or option B? Again, please choose the option that you think it's correct on the poll. I will again give you some time to think. So option A started winning. Now B advanced. 20 of you already had applied. So let's go now for the third question and our last one. So which has the higher total carbon footprint? Option A, a locally produced tomato that is out of season, or letter B, an imported tomato that is in season. Please again, vote for the option you think has the higher impact. So, all right, I think it's everyone had voted. So who got it right? I'm sure that some of you feel quite confident about your answers, and some of you might already be reconsidering them as I was talking about the people's votes. Well, so let's take a look at the results. And I have to reveal that neither of you got it right. And that's for one simple reason. It's not possible to say who pollutes more based on intuition. Sorry. For example, we think that a petrol-powered vehicle pollutes more than an electric one, but it depends where the electricity comes from, the battery, the extraction of the raw materials, maintenance, useful life, end of life. The life cycle of a product is complex. It involves raw material, energy, transport, industrial processes, emissions, waste. Everything is interconnected. Today, we are going to see just that, how to move on from impressions to evidence. And this is exactly where life cycle assessment comes in. But before we go deeper into life cycle assessment, it is important to understand the concept of life cycle. Every product goes through a sequence of stages. It begins with the extraction of natural resources, followed by production of raw materials, manufacturing, distribution, the use phase, and finally the end of life stage. The key idea behind life cycle assessment is that environmental impacts can occur at any of these stages. So, life cycle assessment is a structured and standardized methodology. These standards define how to assess environmental impacts in a comprehensive, comparable, and transparent manner. In simple terms, LCA compiles all inputs and outputs of a system and translates this into impacts. Now, let's take a look on the main stages of an LCA study. According to international standards, an LCA study is structured into four main stages. Each of these stages involves several methodological choices and detailed analysis. Let's go for each of them. First, goal and scope. Here we need to clarify why we are conducting the LCA. At this stage, we need to clearly define several elements. For example, what is the objective of the study? Who is the intended audience? What product system will be analyzed? What functional unit will be used? What system boundaries? What the level of details? This is the most strategic moment because it defines everything that follows. Once the goal and scope are defined, the next step is the life cycle inventory. It's the collection and modeling of all flows in the system. This includes inputs such as raw materials, energy, and other resources, and outputs such as emissions to air, water, and soil, and waste generations. As you can imagine, this stage can involve a significant amount of data and detailed modeling. Then we move to the next stage, the life cycle impact assessment. At this stage, the inventory data is translated into environmental impact indicators. This means translating emissions and research use into different impact categories. For example, climate change, acidification, eutrophication, resource depletion, human toxicity, and many others. Going through all of these categories in detail would take much longer than this webinar, so today we'll just focus on the general principles. So now let's go to the interpretation phase. It's where we bring everything together, analyze trends, identify critical points, and draw robust conclusions. And it's important to note that rather than a rigid sequence, these steps work iteratively. We go back whenever we need to refine data, adjust boundaries, or improve the quality of the study. This interaction is what ensures that final credibility of the LCA. So, as you can see, conducting an LCA involves many stages, many data sources, and many methodological decisions. For many companies, this can feel a bit overwhelming. And this is exactly where C5 Lab can help. You define the objective, and we can take care of the rest. We can help define the study correctly, ensure methodological consistency, use appropriate tools and databases, and also translate the results into meaningful insights for decision making. And that leads us to the result of sorry, LCA that can be applied in many different contexts. That means that uh, what can you really do with an LCA study? Well, it's product development and improvement, strategic planning, environmental communication, public policy development, and of course, marketing and product communication. But let's get back for other characteristics of an LCA, and let's talk about system boundaries. System boundaries means deciding which processes and life cycle stages are included in the analysis. As you can see in this diagram, defining these boundaries can become quite complex because we need to consider multiple processes, flows and material flows of materials and energy, and also interactions between different stages of the life cycle. It's kind of complex, so let me do the C5 Live job and simplify that for you. This diagram is kind of simple, and we have just to define three main terms: cradle to grave, cradle to gate, and cradle to cradle. On this slide, there are three boxes, A and B and C, and let's take a look to the diagram and start thinking which one is each one. So let's you at home try to please to figure it out which one goes on box A, for example. And again, as you can see on box A, we have all life cycle models as well the benefits and burden beyond the system. So it's going to be gravel to grave. Sorry. Let's now think about C, just from raw materials to productions, covering just only the initial phase of the material. So that is cradle to gate, just to the gate of the industry. And then, of course, cradle to cradle will be our box B that covers the initial phase and end of life. So now that we have seen how LCA is structured and how system boundaries define what we analyze, the next question is, why does this matter for companies? It's basically better decision making, innovation and product improvement, transparency and credibility, and marketing positioning. So LCA can help companies make better environmental and strategic decisions. You need to, from this webinar, remember the main part, that is life cycle assessment can create significant value for your company. In many industries today, companies want to demonstrate that their products are more sustainable than others. But making this type of claim requires credible and transparent evidence. LCA provides the specific basis to support these comparisons. It allows companies to quantify environmental impacts and to communicate their performance in a reliable way. Well, all that said, despite its advantages, there are still several misconceptions about life cycle assessments. One common myth is that LCA is only relevant for large companies. In reality, many small and medium-sized enterprises are increasingly using LCA to improve their products and respond to market expectations. Another misconception is that LCA is only about carbon emissions. While climate change is an important impact category, LCA actually evaluates multiple environmental impacts, such as resource use, water consumption, toxicity, and many others. Also, some people think that LCA is only used for regulatory compliance, but in practice, many companies also use it to support innovation, product development, and strategic decision making. So, after addressing these common misconceptions, the question is no longer whether a company should use LCA, but rather how to get started. And for many organizations, this can be a most challenging part. Where do we begin? What data is needed? What should be included in the study? And this is exactly where C5 Lab can support you. You define the goal, and we can take care of the rest. These are, and for that, of course, these are some key success factors for implementing an LCA. We need good data, internal collaboration, the right tools and databases, and importantly, expert support. And that's what you're doing here. Well, before we finish, we are going to launch a quick poll for you. And if you would like to stay connected with us, learn more about LCA and other topics, just select as on the poll you're seeing your screen to subscribe to our newsletter, and then we can keep in contact. Also, I want to let here for you all our contacts, and I want to thank you very much for your attention. I hope this webinar has given you a clear introduction to life cycle assessment and its value. I would now be happy, very, very, very happy to take your questions. There is a Q&A section here, and please feel free to reach out using the contacts on the screen. On this QR code is directly go to our website. And let's see if you have any questions you can do here in our Q&A. Otherwise, thank you very much for your attention. So it seems that